What we are recommending and what staff developed were 5 strategies around the fiscal sustainability that we've been talking about today. And I want to go through those slides quickly. Really what we want to do is go through these slides, and then once we get through this presentation, really engage in a discussion with council on what your priorities are in this regard and whatever other priorities you may have. So let me go through these quickly. We talked about these this morning. The solution that we're looking for is to create strategies that foster economic progress and stability, talking about funding of core services, and the other things that we talked about this morning. So I'm just going to go through these quickly, and we break each one of these down into some of the strategies that we have recommended to you as the council, and then you can obviously prioritize these and make your own recommendations. But develop a detailed plan to fund core services. Within that, you see some of the key areas that we've identified, aligning funding sources to uses, such as the street fund, and dedicating those sources to where they go. Prioritizing city services, diversify the funding base, and this goes back to some of the discussion that was just being had on the grants. Are there other grants out there that we can attract? Reviewing the city revenue streams. We've done that with the RDA revenues. That's how we ended up in the discussions that we're in with the county over the RDA issues. City Council, in fact, at the last council meeting also approved going forward with the C-Tax committee of the legislature that's reviewing the C-Tax. We think there's $1.9 million of an adjustment that needs to be made there as well. Improving our financial transparency and reporting. We've already started some of that process with the release of the transparent Reno site. We have other components of that are coming within the next few months. We, as you know, released the vendor payment piece now, and we're working on the payroll piece, and so within the next few months we'll have that. Streamlining our internal processes. And really the goal here under streamlining our internal processes is to look at those processes that affect the business community. This kind of ties in with what we heard today at lunch with EDON. How do we make the city more of a business-friendly environment? How do we improve our processes to make sure that we're not a hindrance to business coming to this area? The next one was they developed the asset management approach. I talked about it this morning. We are looking at consolidating office buildings, taking the CD staff that's over in the Sinclair building, moving them over to 1 East First, and then potentially selling or leasing the Sinclair facility. Looking at our other assets, do we have other equipment that we can sell? Do we have excess equipment? Deferring the purchase of assets where appropriate. It goes back to the discussion on depreciation. Just because an asset is depreciated completely doesn't mean you have to replace it. So if there are areas where we can defer the purchase of assets, we would like to do that as well. And then back to the strategic real estate plan, and this goes back to the C.B. Richard Ellis report, and are there things in that report that we can implement as a city? Refine our debt management plan. We talked about this. Seek opportunities to restructure our debt. And then construct a plan to fund liabilities and reserves. We need to establish an OPEB trust. This is the retiree health benefits that you just saw in the financial presentation. And really what we need to do is establish an 8 to 10-year plan of how we fully fund those benefits. And then we need to aggressively realign future employees' benefits to what we're going to be able to afford in the future. Improvement of our risk management fund. And then we talked about this as part of the depreciation, but looking at that backlog of deferred maintenance issues that we have and begin to address those. We also put on the board legislative changes. The city of Reno submitted some legislative requests last session around 288. Are there other opportunities for legislative changes that we need to look at for either 288 or some of the other workers' comp benefits? And then develop a plan for the reduction of future liabilities. This ties in with some of the other things that we've already talked about, a tiered benefit system, and making sure that we are sufficiently funding the existing employees' future liabilities. So those are the strategies that we are recommending as staff to you. Now, obviously, we would seek your input at this point on those strategies and prioritizing those strategies and whatever other priorities the council may have. So, Mr. Mayor, this brings us to item B4 on the agenda, which is, I think, the item that everyone has been anxious to get to, and that is a discussion on council priorities. The first slide we put up here is the city purpose and whether the city council wanted to make any changes to that. So we have the purpose up here, and Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you at this point.
All right, thank you very much. At this time, let's go to item B4 and talk about different things that council members would like to see or what we're going to do going forward and how to look at it. Mr. Azia.
Yeah, can I ask two questions? It's sort of on the last agenda, but two questions I thought about.
Go ahead.
Andrew, did those numbers that we have in these charts, did they reflect the money from the fire true-ups that we think that the county, was that 1.6 million?
No, they do not.
So it's possible to get 1.6 million from the true-ups. We should be getting that, correct?
We should be.
And then what about the money that we get, that we've been funding Truckee Meadows Fire for the property tax of the annexed areas? Doesn't that come back to us the next fiscal year also?
It's really netted out in the reduction that you saw of the approximately 11.5 million. So there's not an additional million that we'll see. It's a net of that number already.
Councilman Azia, on the true-ups, we haven't even sent them the true-ups for this year.
Right.
And they have done, because of their action yesterday, they owe 30% or 29% of the SAFER grant also that they're saying is strictly Reno's, but it's partly 29% of theirs too. So they owe us 290 or 300,000 there. We probably got another true-up of another $1 million coming that we haven't even sent them the bill on. So we will be getting those out, and then we can work them into our budget by the time budget session gets here.
So yeah, I think those are little things, pieces that we have to keep in mind.
Yes.
So it says our ad valorem is going to go down by 5%, but wouldn't be getting a huge chunk from the, that's just in what's currently in the city of Reno that's going to drop by 5%. But the property that we annexed, we're going to get that. We've been funding Truckee Meadows. I think it's going to be 1.5 million more if they would have continued this on as of July 1st. That we're letting them keep, that we would now get back.
Right. But it's part of that net 11.5 million, and we can get you some detailed information on that.
Then 5% wouldn't have been right on these charts. Because 5% of 48 is 5 million. And that's what it went down.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too much into a detailed budget discussion. I mean, we can bring that information back to you in the budget workshop or supply it to you. Really wanted to try and focus on what are the strategies that we want to develop as a city moving forward to address some of these issues that we've outlined today, as well as address your priorities.
Mr. George.
So, Andrew, I know you don't want to get too into the budget discussion, but based upon what's presented, I mean, we're looking at about a $7 million shortfall.
For fiscal year 13, correct.
And I mean, so if we're start looking at priorities, I mean, we've got to first address that $7 million, I would assume.
That's correct.
And you got a, I don't know if you have a plan for that yet, or you're trying to bring something back to a strict budget for that.
No, and what we'd like to do is based on whatever your priorities are today that you develop, we'll take those priorities, incorporate it with the shortfalls that we'll have, and then we'll bring back a budget plan to you at the May 3rd meeting. But I mean, to put it in context, we're starting out in the hole. I think is
$7 million.
Right.
So first thing we need to do is find $7 million.
Right.
Well, I mentioned that's increasing reserve levels, so we can modify those back down to their, to the minimum standard if we want to do that as one way, because those numbers reflected those increases, that modest increase in that first year. So there's some ways that we can get closer.
Still a big number.
It is a big number.
And where do we get the 6.2 million that we had to give the state this last year again? Where did that come from?
You're talking about the workers' comp?
Workers' comp.
And I'll have Rob explain that.
We took it from a variety of sources. You would put the largest chunk of it in the contingency account. So we took it from there. Remember, we reduced the CIP allocation. You'd programmed a $4 million CIP. We took that down. And then we had some other small revenue sources that
So those,
paid
I
for
guess
it.
my point is those were one-time things.
Correct.
That would come back into the budget this year, I would assume.
Well, they were some of them were one-time only revenues that we were receiving. Part of that's getting eaten up by the 5% reduction in your ad valorem, the $2 million decline in franchise fees. Those kind of things are eating into what would have, you would be correct, that those would come back in the next year.
And based on whatever priorities you set today, and we'll bring back a detailed budget plan for you at that May 3rd meeting.
Mr. President.
Yeah, just one more follow-up on that for this year, Andrew. We adopted a budget. Are we on track this year? Or do we have a shortfall for 11, 12?
No, go ahead.
We're currently tracking with
Please
the,
stand and talk louder.
we're currently tracking with the amount of revenue that we're now seeing coming in, and so we've got that little bit of a safety net left. Like I mentioned earlier, obviously we'd come to you if we needed to use that $2.1 million that remains in the stabilization or contingency fund. But right now, with the way revenues are coming in, the way that we're adjusting numbers and looking at the things that are before us, we seem to be tracking along to the point where we're going to meet the budget. Now, you know, I can't say that we're not going to get unanticipated expenditures or some sort of a steep decline in revenues, but at this point, we feel pretty comfortable about where the budget is.
And one of the concerns that we have is the first quarter of this year. I mean, just anecdotally, what we're hearing is that the first quarter is not going to be as good as some of the other previous quarters. I mean, you saw an 11% increase in the December sales tax numbers. We're on a 2-month delay with the Department of Taxation when we get those numbers, but anecdotally what we're hearing is that the January numbers are not going to be as good, obviously, as the December numbers.
Mr. Ashep.
Yeah, on the slide really that is the solution, as I read it, where it's discussed with prioritize the direction of staff, funding core services, action plan, etc. So for the 2012, to Dwight's point, 2012, 2013, I have a $7 million shortfall. So at the bottom of that slide, I would put a negative $7 million. And you're going to come back and tell me how through that process, when we prioritize, how we're going to make up that difference, assuming revenues come in as projected, assuming expenses come in as projected.
That's correct.
So when does staff plan on having that discussion with us? Because presumably you could say we're funding these core services. It's different than we've done in years past. We're going to save $1 million between that 2012, 2013 time frame. So now we have a $6 million shortfall, not a $7 million shortfall. Then the asset action plan, we're going to maintain our actions, but here's where we're going to take cuts, and here's the consequences of that. But we're going to save $1.5 million. So now I've got my deficit down to about $5 million for that 2012. Can I look at it that way? And then the debt management plan, is that what staff is coming back to us within the budget process? Because, so for example, funding core services, if the council makes senior services a priority again, and we hold the line, then at that point, we would be able to make those decisions and see where else we're going to cut, because we're not going to have everything. We're looking at a $7 million shortfall.
Right, and what we had hoped is that based on the discussion today, and based on the priorities that you set for staff, once we have those priorities, we'll go back and we'll do just what you're describing. We'll start putting that budget together, and then we'll come back on May 3rd with a budget plan based on the priorities that you established today, and also dealing with whatever shortfall we have, because there are some things that will offset it as you're talking.
Right, so for example, on the last one, reduction of teacher employee liability, and staff suggests doing some kind of tiered benefit formula. So as new employees come in, their benefit structure is going to be different than existing employees, but we're really not hiring anybody.
No, and that's
So
really,
that's not, we're not going to see a bunch of savings until we start hiring.
no, and a lot of these are really more long-term strategies. You know, from a long-term standpoint, as you know, that if we don't start reducing that liability and start funding it, you know, at some point in the future, it's going to create a significant problem for us. And so you're right, it's not going to save us anything.
Not going to help us solve this $7 million.
No, and what we're trying to do is take that long-term view of, you know, the 51 million that Robert talked about. You know, if we had $51 million today and put that into, you know, a fund, we would still need $15 million a year to keep up. And those are the things that we have to start, in my opinion, that we have to start funding.
Outside of that, I think when I look at the priorities we had last year, I still like them all. I think they're all still really vital. I think the financial management, just the people we hired and what we've been going through, and finally 6.2 and raising rates we had to, we've sort of helped along with that. So that's had really good, I think, positive results. Economic development, it's tough to do. That's sort of what we went to lunch to talk about, whether that's really our job or maybe it is with trying to make it easier on businesses to do work in Reno. Public safety, I think we're going to have a bigger role here, trying to get a fire service up and see where that's going to set once we, at the end of July. Nobody really knows what it's going to look like. And that brings me to another part of public safety is I also think that we have to look at our contract with the county that they're getting out of to make sure that they're following all the terms of that contract. We may have to file a lawsuit. One part in particular, I think it said that they had to go back to a certain pre-existing contract with fire personnel at the county level, and I don't believe they're doing that. And we're the only ones who could file suit on that because we're the signatories, not the union or anyone else. I think there's parts in there that we're going to have to really look at, and before even the June 30th rolls around, we may have to look at being more direct with that. I know you and Pierre have been working with them a lot, and those talks sort of went away yesterday when they picked the new chief. So we have to start looking at our legal examples too.
And the city manager, just to bring all of you up to date, the city manager met yesterday with me and the fire chief and legal counsel about looking into the contract they have and what they have to do to follow up to return those firemen back to the positions they had. So they're going to review that contract and everything for us and get back to us.
That would be great. And the last one, arts, culture, and special events, as we heard from Mr. Bonifant today, that the only thing that's moving up is food service and drinking and special events. But I'll tell you, I think that's the one that we haven't done enough in. We haven't done much. Everything I look in here, what we did, we pushed it off to RSCVA. The RSCVA is going to do this, and the RSCVA is going to do that. I don't know if the RSCVA board knows that, but that's sort of what the people in charge of this have sort of pushed it forward. I haven't seen many things new come forward. I think we've been maintaining the old stuff, but not to promote anything new or to do anything to clean something up. So that's the one I don't think that we've put enough oomph into in the past year. But I don't mind keeping the same priorities on, to tell you the truth. They all look.
Well, I think public safety, and I think agree with you, the things that we're doing here, I would like to see a little more ump on the arts and culture and special events, and see what we can do and see what we can, if we can work some way so we can increase those activities a little bit. I agree with you. Yes, sir.
Yeah, the only comment I would make, Mr. Mayor, is I know the council's been very supportive for senior
Absolutely.
senior programs, et cetera, particularly given the fact that the county's looking at cutbacks. A lot of those programs, I think we need to hold the line in those services. And also with the access community and other vulnerable population we have, which I think we should continue to maintain. And then the other thing I would like staff to look at, because
a little louder, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. If the county really is on this course where they're going to basically try to stand up their own fire department, we really have not addressed this mutual aid automatic aid, because there should be, as the chief has indicated before, once we have our own, unfortunately, go into this, our own fire department based on the county's actions, we're going to protect the citizens of Reno first.
Absolutely.
Therefore, if we're going to provide aid to the county in those donut holes where they don't have coverage, we need to resolve with the county immediately what they're going to have to pay for those services. And that's a revenue source that we haven't really put in the.
I think that's absolutely correct, and I think that's one thing we asked the attorneys to work on yesterday, is to get into that, because we have to come up. We threw out, give us 90% of the taxes in those districts, and that just sinks their pond all the way. But right now, you're watching the county. I've taken over 8 troubled hotel casinos in my lifetime, and every time I get into it, I see a shell game going on, because you're moving money from animal control to the sheriff's department. You built a water company you didn't need, and a treatment plant for $25 million. You can't pay for it, so now you want to move it over to Tumwa. You also spent another $13 million out at Damani Ranch on drawings and things that they never did build. You got $40 million at Incline Village. You got $30 million for Balladini Ranch. So I personally think the county, we need to go to them. The county is playing a shell game. I think they're in financial trouble. We offered at a meeting recently to sit down and work with them and cover the bases, so we've got bond problems, they have financial problems. They turned a deaf ear to it completely, and so there's a shell game. There are serious financial troubles over at the county, and they don't want to address them because they're moving the shells around to try to balance their budget. And fire's another one. The firemen sat down with Mr. Who's the chairman? Larkin. With Mr. Larkin and with Miss John. Miss John is the only one that supported it. Mr. Larkin, they gave him a pound of money. The fire department came back with a way to set it up and how to do it, where every station would be open with 4-man crews and everything. And the county's still hollering, but they've got some financial problems over there. We'd like to work with them and try to help them. But under the circumstances, I think that they're playing a good shell game right now, and somewhere it's got to come. And we've got problems, don't misunderstand me. We've got bond problems, and we're working on them, but we need to address them all. And I hope the county will sit down with us and work on those things so we can go forward as a unit in this region and help them and work it out so everybody benefits. Yes?
Mr. Mayor, on that, I'm always a proponent of Plan B. I mean, we've been working with the county for 8 months on this now. Have yet to have a public meeting with them about fire service and what's going to happen. To think that we're going to get an agreement with them that they're going to pay us back for delivering service to islands, I think is not going to happen. I'll leave hope for it, but I don't think it's going to happen in the next 4 or 5 months. So to me, Plan B is I'd like legal to go about seeing what our ability is to bill the services directly to the person we're delivering the service to. We go out to a fire in Collin Ranch at a home, here's your $25,000 bill.
And we need to look at that and
see if we can do
you're
that.
absolutely correct.
That, and you go respond to a heart attack, $5,500. Because that will get them to get on their own commissioners to say, how come I'm paying you and now I have to pay the city of Reno?
Yeah, and I mean, I certainly, as a last resort, I certainly understand moving in that direction. The concern I have is what I brought up before is there's also a cost just to stand up the station.
I understand.
That's right.
I mean, so it's more than just what it costs us to go out and fight that fire that day. There's a cost associated with.
We include that in the bill. We include.
But you wouldn't know that until the end of the year, and you would. I mean, you'd have to take a.
I think we just sort of
you'd
ask,
allocate
right
those
now,
costs
you have to start with the average and say, if we have to respond to a medical call, it doesn't even have to be fully recompensable. I think it's enough to get the people upset, which they should be. When you go out to Hidden Valley and they get a $2,500 bill to respond to a medical call, they'll be on the phone to their commissioners. But we have to have something in place on July 1st, because I don't think there's anybody here at this table that thinks that we're not going to provide service to those islands. That's why the county doesn't have to talk to us. They know we're going to. We all know we're going to. Everyone knows
Our
that we'll still
people are
provide
very
service.
professional. You're absolutely correct, and they're going to do anything they can to save lives and everything, and no matter what's said. and the county is basing that we're not going to sit there and watch a house burn.
And that's 21% of their base, Mr. Mayor, and that's how they're setting up this whole structure, is 21% of their taxes of the people they don't have to provide any services to. So I could do that with 20% more. It would be pretty easy to do. If I took 20% of the population in Reno and took their taxes and didn't provide any services, I could balance my budget pretty easily.
I just wonder if legally, and this is another question for legal, is can we provide service to them if we don't have an automatic aid agreement in place?
Well, automatic aid, mutual aid are different.
Two different.
This is
It's
primary aid. That's the
But if we
difference.
don't have any agreements in place to service those islands, can we legally service those islands? And what's our liability for doing it?
That's a good question.
And I think we should authorize the city attorney's office, if they need to go out and bring in some outside counsel, because I know you're loaded with everything going on, let's bring in some outside counsel and let's find out where we are.
So let's change that
Because we
$7
need
million
direction.
figure to $8 million?
And if we're going to have staff look at those options, can we bill them back? There's maybe another way to address that need as well, and that's, we've already got the 2-tier service level for the first responder. RIMSA also responds to those calls. Do we look at a different way of, does it, given these times, given the $7 million deficit, given the divorce from the county with no reimbursement, they're expecting our services, but they don't expect to pay for it. Is there a better way to utilize the services of RIMSA? Do we no longer have?
Just don't respond to medical calls?
Again, though, I mean, we might find out that we can't respond at all if we don't have any agreements in place.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but we need to look at all options.
Well, the reason I want to bring it up is we've been trying to go out to the public and tell them what's coming up, and I want to get this out early. If this is a possibility, and maybe it'll get people's attention that
Absolutely.
they're going to get a big bill.
Well, y'all did a great job at Collin Ranch, and they still think that we're talking about mutual aid and auto aid, whereas we're talking about primary services. And Collin Ranch thinks we're going to cover them from Mayberry Drive and from Skyline Boulevard. and those are not our first responders. Collin Ranch has to be understanding that their first responder is VERDAC, and their second truck will come from Sun Valley or come from Mount Rose Highway. So God bless them. I think we could have a barbecue quicker than the houses to be saved. And for the 3 houses and the barn we've got up in, where is that, Cold Springs?
Cold Springs.
Yeah, check in and see if we can just insure those houses for 100%, and then we don't have to worry about them.
Well, it brings up another issue, Mr. Mayor, about fire again, is on some of those areas up there, can we de-annex?
And we need to look at that.
The development's not coming that we thought was going to
That's
happen.
right.
Can we just
So
take
we
those
need to
properties,
de-annex them.
de-annex them? I don't know if many of those are bringing in as much revenue as
There
they're
were
saying.
several big developments going to go, and you're
Right.
absolutely correct. We should
We
look
can keep
into
them in our, we
de-annexing
can
those
keep them in our
areas.
sphere of influence, so
That's
when the
right.
developments come in, we can then annex them. But
That's
right
right.
now, we can take them out of the annexation plan.
That's right.
And the county can take the revenue from those properties, but they would be responsible for providing service.
So John and Tracy, y'all need to, and if you need to gear up, let's get somebody, because we only got 30 or 45 days to start gearing up. And we need to know in the next 10, I'd say in the next week or 10 days, what this contract is with the fire and the men and women that we have that came from the other agency. And if we have to sue the county to make sure those people are taken back at the parts of the contract, then I think we should be prepared to file that lawsuit within the next week or 10 days.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Andrew, can I ask a question, or someone from staff? Yesterday on the county's agenda, I believe they were going to vote whether we could have a meeting that vote. How did that vote, how'd they vote on that?
I don't think it was agendized appropriately for them to vote yesterday.
I mean, does anyone know?
I'm not sure. I'd ask staff if they.
Unfortunately, Mr. Klinger, I don't have an answer for that right now, but we can certainly find that out.
We'll send another letter to them asking for a meeting next week, and they don't have to have a vote to see if we have to have a meeting. If they want a meeting with us, call me. I'll call you guys together, and we'll have a meeting with them.
And we do have that
Maybe-
on our
maybe we should
agenda
go
on
find
March
out.
6th.
Yeah, check the records, and let's see if they
Can
took
someone make
action
a
on
call
that.
though? I mean, while we're in this meeting, I think
Sure.
that's important,
We can do
Mr.
that.
Mayor. I mean, we're kind of joking about it, but to me, this is a serious issue.
Oh,
We're
it's very
talking about the future of fire services in our community. We're talking about seniors. We're talking about a voter-approved tax that's supposed to be going for a specific purpose for animal control. I mean, these are huge issues.
It's another way they balance their budget.
Well, I mean, these are huge issues. We're elected officials who have an obligation to respond to our constituents.
That's right.
And the fact that they've gotten away with not having a public meeting to discuss these issues is, I mean, is very concerning, to say the least. And if we don't have that opinion by the AG, my concern is that they're going to be taking this an arbitrary decision, especially on animal services, Mr. Mayor, that they can't undo or come back. I'm not sure this is legal. I mean, what they're proposing, literally, and I asked the county manager when she made our presentation at the meeting, we're not talking just, we're talking about what, 70% of the revenue that goes to animal services? So the bigger picture is here, if they do this decision, and staff is correct in reading that law, how once they divert those funds, then essentially they would be shutting down the animal services operation, which we're a party to that agreement.
Right.
And in the interlocal obligation of the county to provide these services. And the other thing I want to say is that when we asked them about the seniors, this is exactly why we need a joint meeting. I believe the senior shortfall was 280, 300,000. Let's just use 300,000. They're talking about diverting the whole $4 million and then plus another 2 cents year after year. Not to have a meeting to discuss this issue and the serious legal ramifications. That's why I asked the city attorney's office as far as an injunction, because once they do it, I don't see how they're able to reimpose, and you'd have seriously an animal control shelter that the voters voted on that would not be in operation anymore. Because you're taking 70% of the revenue that goes to fund that operation is gone.
And right now, they've moved that under the sheriff's department. Are they using that dedicated source of income to help balance the sheriff's budget?
Absolutely.
And they can take the general fund money and move it somewhere else. So there's a lot of ramifications to it, and we do need to see if we can get an injunction or we can stop it until they have a meeting and talk. If they had to come to us and ask for money to pay for senior citizens, there's not one person that wouldn't have voted for it here at this table to help the seniors out. But to play the cat and mouse game and no public input or no meetings with us and not telling us what their plan B is if they can't put the fire department together. So we need a meeting, and I hope they'll give us a meeting.
And then just another question for the city attorneys. I mean, they have on their calendar when those budget meetings are going to be there. If there's a quorum of the council, couldn't we just put on agendas for us and we all go down to the commission?
Yep.
You sit in the audience and the public comment.
No, I'm serious. If I mean, enough is enough here. I mean, I would like that, just like we've agendized other meetings. Why couldn't we agendize it where we're going to be at 9th Street in the county commission chambers, and we'll all speak under public comment, and since there'll be more than a quorum of us down there, I don't see why we couldn't do that. To get these issues discussed, Mr. Mayor, maybe it takes us all going to the county commission next week on their agenda to do it.
That's right.
Well, you bring up a good point. If you remember right, when we moved we used to have our meetings on Tuesday. The reason we moved them to Wednesday is so we could attend each other's meetings.
That's
that was
right.
a big reason why we
That
moved
was right.
the meetings.
Mr. Mayor, we do have an answer on Councilwoman Barraza's question on the action the county took yesterday. The action that they took, as explained to me by Cadence, was that they wanted to use the current process to set the agenda, which is the mayors and managers, and that they wanted to have a meeting with mayors and managers to set an agenda for the 19th and have a meeting on the 19th, but that the agenda would be set under the existing process.
You know, I would like us to just, I don't know if we vote on that today, but just to
We did.
agendize the meeting, Mr. Mayor, of the majority of the council, however, and put it for 9th Street at the County Commission Chambers, and I'd like to go down there.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. You have the power as the mayor and also the city manager to set special meetings of the council, so you don't need to take a vote on it. So if you choose to do that, we can coordinate with you those legal issues.
Sure. We can handle that. Can't we, Mr. Clean?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. All right, yes, ma'am, Ms. Edger.
Mr. Mayor, I think it's pretty clear that the county doesn't want to have a meeting with us because they understand from the history that we've shown that we will come and bail them out. Whenever they've had financial situation, we'll come and bail them out. They expect their plan, as we know, is full of, the fire plan is full of the expectation, presuming no change to the current operating agreement in terms of mutual and automatic aid. They won't even address primary, obviously. They've threatened no senior services. They know, again, because of our performance levels, that we'll come through and we'll bail them out. We'll provide those services. And that's really unfortunate because we are also, Dave, you always say it better, we city incorporated city residents are also county residents, and we just don't get the full value of the taxes that we pay. But that being said, for me, the top priority areas, and they've been shared already, somewhat discussed, truly is the economic development. I think that we do own that responsibility, much like I described a year ago when we were having this very discussion. It really is what we need to not only improve our revenue and find a way to get out of our $7 million deficit, it's by increasing our revenue sources, and we need to play a very dramatic and strategic role in that. We do need to continue to push for some of the services that we provide that are economic development related be considered at the shared services level so that we do have all of the strategic players involved and build synergy with the rest of the players in this community. We can do that better than most sources to work with EDON and the power company and the public utilities and the financial and the university system. We need to be there. Senior services, as I just made reference to, yeah, we absolutely need to make sure that we're there to improve what we do and be prepared to perhaps pick up what clearly isn't going to happen over at the county. That's one of the reasons why I was asking the number. I've seen some data that suggests, even though Mr. Bonifant this morning couldn't specifically identify the demographics for us, our numbers are growing. Our senior numbers are growing exponentially, and we need to satisfy that demand. And then, of course, the fire, the mutual and automatic. I mean, at some point, we're going to need to decide, and we keep saying we're going to need to decide that, are we going to do it? Are we going to be that primary service provider? And Dave, I love the idea of having staff look at options, but I don't think it's just the option if we charge them, for the service. Let's look at any
Oh,
option.
absolutely, that's just one. I would hope it wouldn't come to that. I'd rather have an agreement with the county, absolutely.
And then I'd like to hear from staff in terms of public safety in general. Are we going to see them looking at pulling out of other services? I know, Chief, we've seen them already pull out of some of the mutual cooperative services. Is there a reason to anticipate that they may be looking at pulling out of others, and what kind of impact will that have on us?
Well, the Reader's Digest version on that is actually we have developed.
A little louder, Chief.
Steve Pitts, for the record, Reno Police Department. We've developed actually 3 programs in the last 6 months with Washington County and the Sparks Police Department to deal with regional investigative assets, to deal with the dignitary protection issues that we see coming, obviously, with the election. I don't know if you've heard the numbers from 08, but I mean, 120, 130,000 will cost law enforcement to cover a presidential candidate for a couple of days. And so we've built a regional asset to deal with that. So they've come to the table with us. These ideas actually have been stimulated by Reno PD, but the sheriff, Ms. Zadra, and council, and Sparks PD have come to the table with us on 3 regional assets we've developed in the last 6 months. So And they're more collateral, not full-time.
Yeah. I may be reading more in between the lines than is justified, but, you know, when I hear of 2 sheriff's employees running for 2 different county commission seats, potential of running for 2 different council, or commission seats, you gotta wonder what they know and what they're trying to protect.
Mr. Dorch.
Mr. Mayor. So Andrew, I mean, as we look at the priorities, and you've heard that keeping the existing priorities is important, I'm assuming that you want to create strategies that foster economic progress and stability as a priority, with the plans underneath it as part of the priorities, I would assume. Is what you're looking for.
That would be our recommendation to council, yes.
And Mr. Mayor, on the other issues that have been brought up, I mean, if the county's agreed to a meeting on the 19th, I think that's what we shoot for. I mean, I understand where Jessica's coming from, but it's going to be it'll be a much better meeting if we're all at the table and can have discussions than us going to the county.
The problem with that is that they won't agree to those issues that we talked about. We saw what happened last agenda meeting, when we all showed up.
The joint meeting?
At the joint meeting, I mean, we had Connie and the others who were concerned about senior services, folks that were concerned about animal services. They're at the table to come under public comment, and they couldn't even do anything because the issues aren't agendized for discussion.
Well, I think either the mayor or the chairman of the county commission can put items on the agenda, though, correct?
They're saying that all 3 of them have to agree which items are placed on the agenda.
Well,
Is that right?
no, we will meet with them, Andrew, figure out when the next meeting, we will meet with them and put animal services and senior citizens on there. Fire, there's nothing until we get together as a group. They have not told us what Plan B is. Chief has been working with them. He went into a private session with them yesterday. They gave him 2 or 3 minutes to try to explain everything in opening, and I think that we can try to sit down with them. We should start planning how we're setting up our own fire department and how we're going forward and what we're going to charge for the services that we need. Now, if they want to sit down with us, then they'd have to ask us, and we will sit down with them. I told them in the newspaper yesterday, we're still open to sitting down and talking. So as far as I'm concerned, fire's in the chief's hand right now to see where we're going and see if they want to get together and talk, because they've got a lot of problems that they haven't addressed. And maybe they're going to take care of it with volunteers or whatever they're going to do, I don't know. But they ought to tell us what their plan B is. At least I thought they would, but if they don't, we'll go ahead and set up ours and they can worry about theirs.
And on that, I don't think the existing automatic aid mutual aid agreements would carry over to the new entity.
No.
So they would have to enter into new agreements. And I wouldn't, I mean, from my standpoint, I wouldn't want to enter into an automatic aid or mutual aid agreement until we've got the primary aid agreement figured out. You know, and again, I think it falls back into what I was saying earlier. Unless we have those automatic aid and mutual aid agreements, I think there's some liability with us going and.
The county has no mutual aid or auto aid with anybody.
Right.
The city of Reno does right now. They have nothing, so they've got to either look or work on something. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, Tracy Chase, Reno City Attorney's Office. For the record, when the city went out and did mutual aid and automatic aid agreements, for the most part, Truckee Meadows was also a signature to many of those agreements. However, there is no current existing agreement between Truckee Meadows or Washoe County and the city of Reno for automatic or mutual aid. That's the interlocal fire consolidation agreement that's in existence. And so those are yet to be negotiated.
Well, you know, the agreement we've had has saved $40 million plus over the last 10 or 12 years. And it's over $40 million now, and they've saved the lion's share. They've got an $8 million surplus that's designated to fire. So I'm not understanding where they're coming from unless they're going to come up with ways to move that $8 million in to balance their budget that they're having right now. But those are things that we need to find out and find out where we're going. At least the citizens of this community in this region need to know the answers to those, what they're going to do. So I know they have an $8 million surplus. It's designated for fire. Can they move that over like they have animal control and do those things? I would like to know, and if we have to, then on behalf of our citizens in the city of Reno, and I'll make it very clear, and Chief, you correct me, our citizens in the city of Reno, in the city limits, will be very well taken care of. We will have the fire responses, and we will have the aids, and we will do what we've got to do. And from their action yesterday, we will start planning that immediately. Is that not true, Chief?
We are not standing up anything. We currently have the existing resources. We have the staff, we have the prevention staff, we have our assets, our capital assets with respect to our vehicles. We've inventoried our vehicles, we're in good shape. We will have to open up Station 9 instead, but we have the facility. We have identified some locations, both at a primary and secondary location down south in case we do have to move out and we can't reach the consensus lease agreement for the existing station at the Walmart Station 14. Will we see a reduction in staff? Yes, we will. Will we see an impact to service delivery on behalf of the citizens? Likely not. We currently have the existing infrastructure. We currently have the existing staffing to meet the needs and threaten the risk for the citizens of Reno. What level of service we provide to our neighbors, if you will, to the Truckee Meadows Fire Protection District, the Sierra Fire Protection District, those have not been analyzed. We all have attempted to sit down and reach some type of mutual aid agreement, automatic aid agreement, and as you are aware that their package is contingent upon service delivery to the islands that we've identified, and they want to tie that to the lease agreement with Station 14 as well as service to the Cold Springs area. Under the direction of the city manager, he's basically said that's an inequitable arrangement. As such, we are moving forward to continue the delivery of service to the city of Reno. How the county expects to deliver services, they now have a fire chief, and that fire chief will be tasked with addressing those service delivery issues. My door is open to him and any member of county representatives to discuss automatic aid, mutual aid, but the direction I've received from the council is crystal clear. Primary aid is a separate issue from automatic aid, mutual aid. And but even the very core question of what is going to be our automatic aid has not yet been solidified. So again, we will focus on delivery for the city of Reno. We're a good department. We deliver great service, and we will continue to do that for the citizens of Reno.
Well, then Mr. Klinger was a lot nicer when they tried to tell us they'd give us the Walmart station. We could use that. It would take care of Hidden Valley, and they would take care of the 3 houses and the barn we had north. Andrew Klinger was a lot nicer. His vocabulary was a lot nicer than mine, and everything else. And he's trying to educate me and teach me how to talk without some of the language that I use.
Damn it, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
What'd you say?
Damn it, Mr. Mayor.
Exactly. That'd be the nicest one. Yes, sir.
Chief, as it relates to primary and the mutual aid, the plan, and I use that term loosely because I don't think they really did develop a plan, but it's throughout it makes reference to, presuming that circumstances are unchanged. And you have attempted to bring resolve to that discussion, automatic aid and mutual aid and primary aid discussion with them multiple times, and you've gotten nowhere with it currently, correct?
That is correct. In each effort that we've had, in each meeting that we've had, again for the record, Mike Renee, Fire Chief, the city has taken the position that we want to discuss leasing the station in the south. We want to discuss automatic aid as a separate entity, mutual aid as a separate or a separate topic, if you will. And the county has taken the position that they want to bring forth a package program or a package deal, if you will. They will allow us $1 a year lease for the station in the south in lieu of us providing primary care into the islands, as well as in the certain areas in the north where we actually have annexed land, but we do not have any real estate, any stick-built homes, if you will. So they continue to hold the position that any discussion with respect to automatic aid and mutual aid will be a packaged offer. In consulting with the Councilmember Ayazi, one of the things that we have basically said is that we are going to develop our own offer and basically, submit it to the county and say, this is it. And I mean, actually, we are more in a position of strength, if you will. We're in a better bargaining position than I think we're given credit for. But we have had those discussions, and up until the last 60 days, frankly, there have been no discussions. We've attempted to have meetings with the county with the fire service coordinator, et cetera, and there has been, we have not had the ability to meet. We haven't met.
Give me some confidence that now that they have hired a chief, that they're going to put some clarity and reverse the language that's in their current operating plan that presumes that current conditions will be maintained.
Okay,
Give me some confidence that their current plan, their operating plan, that continuously says throughout, presuming that nothing changes, that their expectation is that we'll just continue to respond to their calls. Give me some confidence that you think in the 4 months that are left, now that they have a chief, that we're going to be able to get an adoption of their plan or our plan.
I'm not a betting man, but I would not take that bet. My confidence level in us reaching some type of accord, I don't see it happening in the next 3 months, unless the county makes that a single point of focus, priority. I think they're running into a very, very short timeline. As the mayor said, they have to stand up an entire organization. We, on the other hand, have the organization in place. We've been a functioning organization a great many years. I think their window of opportunity is quickly closing. And with respect to hiring a prevention bureau, staff, training, dispatch, they've taken the first step in hiring a chief. It is going to be a monumental task for that chief. And there are some questions as to what his role is going to be during this interim position. There's too many unknowns. And they have made a significant number of assumptions. If you read all of their staff reports, you will find that word predominant in all of their staff reports. And we have sought opportunities to try and reach consensus on some of those assumptions, and we have not been able to do that.
One of their assumptions also is that volunteers will cover some of these areas, these islands, that they would have volunteer fire departments go in and cover some of those areas. Chief, how many people did we have down? When we got called for the fire south of town, how many units?
Within the first 17,
15.
We're talking about the Water fire?
Yes, sir.
Well, we had a unit within just under 7 minutes. It was exactly 6 minutes and about 48 seconds. We had a 4-man crew on scene. Within 17 minutes, we had over 40 firefighters on the ground, and that's excluding the Sierra Fire Protection District. They had an engine, a brush tender. I'm sorry, they had an engine, a brush, and a tender, and a chief officer as well. So within the first 20 minutes, we had a fairly significant punch delivered to that fire.
And they had about 9 people.
Sierra?
Yeah.
I believe so. It was either 9 or 10.
And I'm not going to put you on the spot here because I know the answer already. Their management wanted their units and our units to go around and put signs on the building that this was taken care of by Truckee Meadows and Sierra.
I'm not aware of that.
I am. Because somebody bitched because we put no, this was a Reno fire truck, saved your house.
Yeah, and with respect to that specific item, it is practice with the Reno Fire Department when we do go to a typical structure fire, and oftentimes there'll be a silent alarm or a neighbor will be jogging by and see a little steam coming from the back of the roof. We will show up,
sure.
and sometimes we'll go through the yard. We'll actually look through some windows, and sometimes we may be forced to pop a door or pop a window. Sure. It's not uncommon for us to leave a business card for that resident to know that we were there, or their neighbors will tell them we saw the fire department walking around your house.
And relaxes them knowing that somebody came and
correct.
What.
And we do that so that they can call us back to explain why we were there, what we were doing, et cetera, and if there was any damage we wanted to address those. It's one of our customer service.
Fire, I don't think we need to put out too many notices who was here.
the red trucks tell them.
That's right. All right.
So where are we on that real quick? Everybody laughed, but I really wasn't kidding about putting on welcome to Reno signs in Collin Ranch. And I don't think a lot of people know that they do not live in the city of Reno. I honestly believe that. We should paint a line down the road and right in the middle of the road say entering Reno and leaving Reno, so they'll start understanding.
Well, I know that when our city manager and our fire chief had a meeting with two of their top people, they made the statement, which they deny now because they found out where the city limit was, that Collin Ranch wasn't anything but rocks and grass. That's all they thought Collin Ranch was. And Collin Ranch, the county starts at the tennis courts. And it starts over by my house. I'm really glad I got in the city.
That's the double fault line.
That's a double fault line, that's right. But they indicated they didn't know where it was until the next week, and they found out they were wrong. But their fire consultant and one of their management people made the statement to the chief and the city manager, Mr. Klinger, that the Collin Ranch wasn't anything but rocks and grass, and I was going to try to buy me one of those rocks to see if I could live in it. They're very nice. Anybody got anything you want to bring up now? You know, there's one item here that I think that since one of our colleagues is leaving, that I know it's a rather expensive thing, but I think the Pierre Hashef Whitewater Rafting Course needs to be worked into this budget somewhere. I'm sorry, Mr. Hashef, we're naming
I'm just going to wait on that.
Okay. Well,
the project will be after November.
All right, we'll find some revenues.
So, Mr. Mayor, what I heard is we'll keep the same programs as last year, but add seniors and accessibility would be a whole nother unit, and we'd make sure the Virginia Street Bridge is under public safety.
Right.
Does that sound right?
And then incorporate the manager's priority.
On the financial management side?
Right. And also you had carry on the arts.
Right, that was
the arts and the other, you got that one, okay.
So I'll make that motion.
Is there any keep it simple kind of opportunity to just have one economic sustainability, financial sustainability priorities? Does that make it any simpler for staff? Or
put financial management and economic development under one tier, is that what you're saying?
But all of these, I mean, every single one of these fall in under sound financial management.
Well, I think the manager's priority kind of takes care of that financial management priority from last year.
Right. And Councilwoman Sferraza, I mean, and that was part of what we were aiming for is that, or Zadra, sorry.
Jesus, come on,
there's a lot of
is that those other items, those other priorities would fit under the one priority that we put out there. But I mean, it's up to the council on how you want to proceed. I mean, whether it makes it any easier administratively for us or not, I mean, I don't know. It really puts a focus on the things that we've outlined today, which is what we were trying to do. But I don't know that from a process standpoint that it makes it any simpler for us, if that makes sense.
I get maybe not even easier was not the right word, but the focus is to make sure that every day when we come in, even though there are 6 different fires, and I don't mean that in a bad pun way, that you have to take care of that day, that the focus is still there, that these are the core areas of service that we know we need to be focused on.
Right, and that's part of why we included that under that one strategy was core services, because we felt that left it broad enough that it included all of the other things that we've talked about, the public safety, the arts and culture, the economic development, that it encompassed all of those other services.
Mr. President.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, just a few questions or adds I'd like to see, like under financial management. I know council have done this before, but leveraging where we have some private investment. I mean, certainly Miracle on Turf comes to mind, Mr. Mayor, obviously a passion of mine, and there may be some city commitment needed on the demolition piece, but we have a group that's going out there and fundraising to make that field happen. But also under the economic development piece, I think a key piece that's missing here and where the council, I think, needs to take a greater role is on education. It's not even listed here under economic development. That's such a key component in any study you ever read about diversifying our economy. Is education's a huge piece of that. And I think getting involved with the Board of Regents and also our locally elected school board, we need to have those discussions and see what we can do, even legislatively, to be proactive as far as our state of education in our state. And I think that should be listed under the economic development piece. The arts, culture, and special events, I would just throw in there that it comes down to, which ties into everything else, is quality of life, and not just for our seniors, but our youth as well, which fits into management's presentation of the where we are with our facilities around the city, Northgate, Moana, our parks and rec pieces. Those are huge components to recreational opportunities for youth and seniors, and I think that's got to be emphasized is our quality of life piece. And then the last piece on the public safety, I would just ask the chief, because we've had a lot of discussion about fire. I'd like to know where we are with police as far as staffing levels. We bring up that safety 88. Where are we? I mean, I think the public needs to know where we are as far as staffing levels within our police department, and having a safe city is a key component to economic development, quality of life, education, all those pieces. We haven't really talked about that today, but I'd like to hear from our police chief where we are within the department.
Yeah, for the record, Steve Fitz on behalf of the Reno Police Department. I give presentations, Mr. Franza, probably 3 or 4 a month at luncheons and dinners. And I always kind of give a state of the Reno Police Department compared to where we were in the past. And what I focus on is the progress we've made in spite of the cuts. And we've lost about 100 sworn positions, about 68 civilian positions. We just returned 8 of the 13 that were laid off in fiscal year 9-10 to work, and they just went out on a solo assignment in the field. And we're working on bringing 6 more on board here, hopefully in the next couple of months, and that's going to be a first for us in the last 4 years because of the way the budgets have been. But what we focused on at Reno PD is a philosophy of being fiscally responsible at every level, not just relying on management to push it down to the organization. It's at every level, every citizen, every police officer, supervisor, etc. When you look at crime in Reno, I don't have all the data in front of me, but across the board, we're at about 14%, where the national averages are about 6 and 3 as far as reductions in crime. And nationally, you see there's a trend, obviously, across the country where you're seeing reductions in crime.
So you're saying I want to make
we're
sure.
We're at 14%.
Right. Reduction.
Yeah, we've seen a 14% reduction. We see about 6, maybe between 4 and 6 across the country. This council approved reorganization in 2010, which obviously you may not remember, but I can tell you it's been significant in making the department effective, because we didn't go to a traditional approach of policing, which is have a patrol division and a detective division. We analyzed the programs in the community we thought added value. Some of them, Ms. Zadra asked about, the regional gang unit and other units that some of the other regional law enforcement assets pulled out of. And we continued to keep those units running because they had incredible value to the community. And all those things have been measured by our analytical department. And I can provide something to council if Mr. Klinger recommends that, or maybe a 10-minute overview. But I can tell you that even though we've taken significant cuts, just like the fire department and other departments have, we're moving in a direction of progress. And we're trying to create a different culture. And I can tell you that these cops go out every day, and we want to be second to none in the region in crime fighting and problem solving. And when you measure that, as we do every week, we're doing very, very well. And we appreciate your support on that.
And Chief, I have to say just a compliment to the department because I think the community image of our police department is very high in this community. And I think that says a lot about Reno and what the police department's been able to do and really holding the line with personnel. Just one more question on the annexations, and I don't know if you have this breakdown, but we've talked a lot about fire and that consolidated agreement. How much does RPD, as far as statistically, patrol now? Because compared to unincorporated, and I'm talking really within the city jurisdictions, I mean, where are we at now with that? Because we have a lot more, obviously, that we're patrolling as well.
I mean, statistical analysis of this, our sphere of influence, the core, I mean, is that what you're asking for?
Yes.
I'll have to get that for you, I don't have it today. But I can tell you, remember, you have a significant patrol force. We've built our patrol force up, even with the cuts. And then you have all of these teams that supplement patrol who are assigned to patrol also and deal with crime suppression, deal with repeat offenders, deal with the regional gang problem. And so it's a little bit more complex. I couldn't get into those details today, but I'll make sure that information is brought to you.
But we don't have, again, I think going back to Councilman Dorch's question, do we have a county patrol responding to calls in the city of Reno limits?
I would say it's on a lower frequency. I mean, the Washoe Fire is a perfect example. It happened in the middle of their shift change. They had 4 deputies on the street, and we redeployed 60 police officers within about 10 minutes now. And that's our job. I mean, it's public safety.
No, I'm talking in general. Unless obviously there's a major event, but does the county respond generally?
I would say on occasion.
A rare occasion?
I'd say it's fairly rare.
Okay.
Chief, would you repeat those numbers? And you had that discussion with me, I think, when we were out at the command center. We had how many officers on the scene for the Washoe fire?
Well, this happened just after 2 p.m. Am I correct, Chief? And when they came into my office and said, you know, Chief, there's a huge fire, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And of course, we're getting ready to roll into shift change at 2 and 4 p.m. that afternoon. So we held over day shift and redeployed them down south to help the sheriff out because he was in the middle of a shift change. And what we had been told is they had 4 deputies on the street. They were in the middle of rotating off shifts to get on the street. And so we had about 60 policemen on that fire.
So we had 60 and they had 4. Again, we find a way to respond, and they know that. Everyone knows that.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Klinger, you got anything else you want to bring up?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything else at this
You
point.
need any more direction, Mr. Klinger?
No, I think I have plenty of direction.
All right.
We need a motion still on the, I'll keep the same motion. I didn't hear you add. We can add the stuff you did just to fill in what those topics are, but the topics would be the same as they are now and add seniors and accessibility.
And
Youth.
And youth, seniors and youth and accessibility.
And the manager's priority?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that fits in all these.
All right. Have a second? Got a second by Mr. Ashcraft.
Where do you want the animal services piece?
That would be, I think, the financial
Financial
management.
management, because that's going to be decided this budget session.
Well, legal's going to find out where we are on that and on the fire also real quick. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those that oppose, no. Motion carries unanimously. Do we have any public comment cards?
E5, Mr. Mayor.
Excuse me?
E5, Mr. Mayor.
E5. Yes, they should go to that. Mr. Ashcraft.
Actually, staff has a staff report if they want to, I don't know if staff wants to expand on. I had just asked for this item to come back.
Right.
In the meantime, staff put together a staff report about what our options are.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this is an item that was it was on the last regular city council agenda. It was requested to be carried forward to this meeting, so we brought it forward. Everyone should have the memo from Mr. Chisel that outlines what has to happen with the $7.5 million. because of the way the agreement, the final agreement was worded, that was approved by council, we have to book that $7.5 million as a liability until those conditions go away. So while those conditions exist and it's on our books as a liability, the funds are not available for any other purpose.
Okay.
So I think what I do, Mr. Mayor, is let's defer this discussion maybe to the budget. For
Right.
an opportunity when we're looking at filling the blanks.
I think that's a great idea. We're looking at the 4%. Is that Mr. Azzi?
I just want to be clear on that, the contract, because I think that doing it this way doesn't allow us to do what we're contractually allowed to do in the contract. I mean, it said specifically that we could pay off the bonds of the golf course. It also said specifically we had to hire someone to design a new golf course, and they would pay us back for that. So I think that's the payback, is what can we still legally do with that money regarding the golf course? Because under this scenario, we can't do anything to move forward. I mean, we told the citizens out there the golf course would be designed and operational before the road was built. So I don't know how we have those two things. It seems like there's something in that contract that might be pushing on the other.
And I guess my answer would be is if the city council approved the permits for the road to go through, at that point we could then pay off the bonds and
But we have no idea when they're going to come forward with permits. I mean, that's the problem. And they may come in for permits, and then the road will be done in 6 months, and it's going to take us 1.5 years to build.
Let's look and see what those timelines
But
are in that contract.
yeah, but I mean, I think the real challenge is exactly that, though. If we go out and spend some of this money, and then for some reason those permits aren't approved, and all of a sudden we've got to write a $7.5 million check, and the money's not going to write it.
I think we ought to go back to them on the contract a little bit and say this, maybe the contract has to be reworked so we can do these things that we all agreed that we were going to do.
We can look at the provisions that Mr. Ayazi's speaking about, and I'll work with the city attorney's office to see if there's a conflict there and if there's any remedy to that.
Because I guess that's what my concern is, the residents, what we're told was that we would be doing the design because we lose that funding from the RTC. Isn't that part of the agreement that we said that we would start with design of the golf course? And aren't they reimbursing that expense?
There's a time period on the design and stuff. Let's look and see what it says in those time limits and stuff, and if we have to go back and negotiate something, we can.
We'll look at those provisions. I don't remember offhand what the timing was on those. But Councilman Dortch is right. I mean, it's a liability, and if we spend any of it and we deny the permits, now we're in a position of paying back $7.5 million, and we may not have $7.5 million.
But I think in fairness, though, I'm not so sure that's the case. I mean, that's what one provision of the agreement says. It also says notwithstanding anything else to the contrary, we don't have to pay it if they get denied by someone else. So technically, we could spend the money, and until they get all their approvals, we don't have to give it back. But anyway, I mean, I don't know if this is the proper place to debate that, but.
Well, let's look into it, as you're saying, and let's look into it and see where we have conflicts, and then we can sit and work them out or do what we got to do. Anything else? Anybody want a public comment?
I do.
Good.
Right out of card though.
Good, you can fill out a card a little later.
Okay.
You want to go up here to the podium so we can hear you and see you? I know we can hear you everywhere, so come
You're
on.
putting me on the spot now.
No.
Okay.
Board of Directors, Councilman Vaughn, is it on? Yep. I just wanted to thank the council for everything you've done for listening. You know, we came in pronto and made our case, and you listened, and you were all very considerate, and I really thank you. You have done a lot for seniors in the past 12 years since I started, and I really appreciate that. But I do have an additional concern, and that is, it seems like the safety net gets diminished more and more all the time. And with the lack of the tax revenue and the ad valorem bond that supports it, it just keeps getting thinner and thinner and thinner. And I won't go into the weeds with it because I hear a lot of anecdotal things and cases that dealing with fire and some of the other social service programs where people do get lost in the cracks. But it does get diminished. And I have a concern about the ad valorem bond that does support senior operating budget. I looked it up today, and there's really no definitive date as to when it ends. And it's been in 2016, it will hit 30 years. So I think that we need to look at that too as we begin to look at regional services and providing more of a safety net for people that are aging. Statistics say that there are like 10,000 people turning 65 every day and will do so for the next 20 years. And in 2030, in Washoe County, Reno, Sparks, and Washoe County, that will be 20% of our population. So I'm glad we're starting to talk about these things now so we can get a little bit ahead of it instead of always reacting to it, because there's nothing worse than seeing vulnerable populations fall between the cracks, because there's really, I mean, they diminish really fast and they decline very rapidly and they don't have any resources. So, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When one of our agencies realizes that the city of Reno is in the county, we'll be a lot better off. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Those that oppose, no. Motion carries. We're adjourned. Great report.